Alright, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board, for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to episode 70 of the KissFAQ podcast. I'm Julian Gill, one of your hosts, and joining me today, Alex, BagBoy on the FAQ. Welcome back, Alex.
Thank you.
And the voice of reason, 69th Blizzard Ken. Welcome. And joining us somewhat tardily, we hope, will be Lonnie, St. Louis Kiss, but we'll harass him when he does eventually appear. So, let's talk about some current affairs first, because this is Thursday the 28th, and yesterday the highly anticipated video for Fire and Water by Ace Frehley was released, featuring a certain other member of Kiss, Paul Stanley, the Star Child. You guys had a chance to see that yet? And what are your thoughts? Alex, you look like you're about to jump through the camera.
I loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, even if the intro clearly was a little staged with them kind of walking to each other, I mean, who couldn't get excited? If you've grown up loving Kiss, you've grown up loving Paul Stanley, and Ace Frehley, knowing that there's sometimes disagreements between them and how the press does it and stuff, that video just kind of made you happy. It's kind of like what I think a lot of us, when we saw the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, induction and stuff, there was a joy of happiness of just seeing these guys that we grew up, we idolized, we loved, and so seeing them getting along was excellent. And I was talking with my dad earlier today about the video, and I think the one thing that we were talking about that would have been kind of cool, we're just man, Dad, I just wish they could just slip the makeup off, and no, nothing against Tommy, because I love Tommy's stuff, but man, just get Eric Singer, Ace, Paul, and Jane and just do a tour with no makeup or whatnot, just jamming and stuff. But the video was great, the song was great. I love the action. And it was iconic. You got Paul with his Ibanez Iceman cracked mirror guitar, and then you've got Ace with the Les Paul and the Smokin'. Killer video, and I really hope, if anything, that song takes full by the horns and kind of runs with it and stuff. So I loved it. I mean, 10 out of a 10, 11 out of a 10. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a great video. Yeah, like you said, it's a little corny. The beginning there where they're meeting together, but yeah, it's cool. And just seeing them on stage, and their backs bumping up together, shoulders bumping up together, it kind of reminds you of the good old days when they were in the band together in makeup and so on. So great song, and just it's a simple video. They have some slow motion effects. They got the smoke and guitar, and so it's cool, and I enjoyed it. I mean, if it was a crappy song, I probably wouldn't like it. But it's.
Well, we must be talking Psycho Circus though, because you guys said a crappy song.
No, we haven't gotten to that yet. No. But if it was a crappy song, I said it was. If it was, but
we were talking about your contribution to the tribute album.
Oh
my goodness.
Just kidding. But I gotta throw real quick, I'd really love to hear what Chris Wise and Scott Coogan, how they felt doing that video, being on stage with Paul and Ace at that moment. That'd be kind of interesting.
I'd much rather ask Richie Scarlett how he felt not being in it.
That's the move.
That's true.
No, I would still love to get Richie on here to talk about his time with Ace and his solo career and his stuff, because obviously he's a guitarist that I really appreciate in the band. But talking about the video, Lonnie, welcome to the show, by the way. Glad you could make it.
Sorry, see, that's what I get for trying to say, I can beat the traffic and get home in time.
Hey, it happens, and I got stuck in traffic today as well. So we're just recapping the video since it came out yesterday. I liked it. It's just a straightforward video. It's cool to see Ace and Paul, without makeup.
In action together.
Yeah.
First time we've seen them in action together since
on stage. The video.
The Winter Olympics?
Yeah, the video is just, it's a decent video. It's a decent song. It's not one of the better songs on the album, but, it's more important for having Paul there and just seeing them together. It made me smile. Hell, made me smile. That's all it needs. Winner right there. Lonnie, quick thoughts?
Heck yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a nice little surprise for Ace's birthday yesterday. I think the timing on it was really good. Ace's in the news yesterday. No, maybe not in the news yesterday, but you see people on Facebook or whatever, wishing Ace a happy birthday, and that's out at the same time. So it was very timely, and it was just fantastic to see those two together and interact with one another. Do I think it'll lead to anything in the future? Probably not. But at the same time, for us old school Kiss fans or even new school Kiss fans for that matter, who have never seen, Paul and Ace together on stage, I think it was great. It's everything I wanted it to be.
No, so that's real neat, and of course, happy birthday to Ace, because made it to 65, man. That is it.
Who would have thought that?
Who'd have thunk it? And obviously, while he's been a bit rough lately at the end of the tour, otherwise seems to be pretty healthy and fighting his battle day after day. So, keep going, Ace. Proud of you. Other news. Is there any? No. Am I missing anything? Oh, yeah, the Hysteria box set is on sale, and they're throwing in the free singles box set. So,
Julian, did you pull the trigger today?
No, like I said, I bought a bass recently, so got to pay for that first. And
Ken already pulled the trigger.
At least the bass I've played every day. I can say with a certainty I wouldn't be playing that box set.
I think I might get kicked out if I ordered that box set. So.
But I was tempted, totally tempted. So
I'm already in trouble for buying Guns N' Roses tickets. So,
how much did it go for?
I can't say. She's in the other room, and I'll get in trouble. And and I think if I said, honey, I also bought a Kiss box set for $1,700, but it's okay because it's usually $1,800.
And I did get the single set with it, so
I already got the single set. I already fought that battle.
You already got that. Yeah. Why do you need 2 copies?
Yeah, that would not work at all. And you would
I have 2 copies of the singles box set. I got the CD version and the record version.
Yeah, me too.
Into today's topic, and after last week's fiasco, we're a little bit more, and hopefully ready, and maybe not. We'll find out. Topic today is going to be kind of a hypothetical. If you were the executive producer for Kiss when they're recording Psycho Circus, how would have you handled the Kiss studio album, the reunion studio album at the time? Obviously, Psycho Circus is a very divisive album. A lot of people just seem to hate it because of Tommy Thayer. And that's all you can really say. It's because of Tommy. They hate it because they hate Tommy so much, which is really idiotic to me, but, opinions vary. Other people, it doesn't sound quite what they wanted to hear from the band because obviously Ace and Peter were not involved in it to any sort of degree that they could have been, should have been, and maybe, would have been if there had been a different executive producer that was really guiding the project. And from my perspective anyway, if they had maybe gone in to make an album without having a preconceived marketing idea in the Psycho Circus branding, which I always, bag on a little bit just because I don't get it. I owned every one of those comics. I think I looked at one, and I just don't get. I don't like. Number one, I don't like comics. Number two, it just looks stupid to me. But because I don't like comics, so. Okay. Simple as that. So as an executive producer, there's many different ways of looking at it. Hiring a real producer. Bruce Fairbairn certainly was a real producer. He had all the cachet, all the credentials required to produce Kiss. And again, we get back to Eddie Kramer, Bob Ezrin. Bob was involved in it to begin with. So let's start with producers. If you were an executive producer, would you allow Paul Stanley to produce the album, or would you hire someone who you wouldn't later have to say was holding all of the cards and made all of the decisions, even though you're Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, and make all of the decisions and hold all the cards? So, Lonnie, let's start with you since you're late. And, producers.
First, producers? Eddie Kramer. Absolutely 100% Eddie Kramer. Because what the Kiss Army, and was really at the height of my Kiss fandom. I mean, I was a freshman in college when Psycho Circus came out. Well, no, I guess I was a sophomore in college. Anyway, I was in college when Psycho Circus came out, and it was before I had any kind of adult responsibilities. It was like one of the biggest things. 1998, that and Mark McGwire hitting 62, 70 home runs was the biggest thing in my life at the time. So, a lot of Kiss fans were really looking for a hardcore Kiss album that they've been waiting for really since 79, some since 77. That's a different argument. And people wanted a ballsy Kiss album. I mean, at least my friends and I wanted a ballsy Kiss album similar to the first 3 records. I didn't want anything overproduced. I mean, I love Destroyer, don't get me wrong. I love Love Gun, don't get me wrong. Or I could throw Rock and Roll Over in there, similar to Rock and Roll Over or the first 3 Kiss albums. Just very ballsy, songs about mischievous activities, things like that, for lack of better terms, and just a straightforward Kiss record. And it's not what we got, but I would want Julian. So it's a long drawn out question to Julian's. Long drawn out answer to Julian's question, but Eddie Kramer would have been my choice for producer, hands down. That's because Eddie Kramer knows what a Kiss album should sound like.
Exactly. Alex, what about you?
Vinny Poncia. No, just kidding.
Spit my beer on my monitor.
Where's the I'm reaching for the disconnect button.
No, I gotta agree with Lonnie. I really think Eddie Kramer would have been a great choice with that. The other one I would think is Michael James Jackson, maybe, because he did some great work with the era, the 80s creatures, and look at him kind of era and Animalize. I think he definitely had a feel for that heavy sound with the Kiss album. But definitely, I feel like Eddie Kramer, I feel like they came in and said to Eddie, hey, we want you to do this with us again. We had some great magic with the early Kiss demos that we did with you, with Alive, Rock and Roll Over, and Love Gun. And I feel like, obviously, Dynasty was a little bit of an interesting time. So I feel like almost if we got Eddie Kramer and gone like, hey, let's pick up where we left off with Love Gun. And, we want to have a hard, crunchy sound. Can you give that to us? Can you help us get there? And stuff. And like Lonnie said, songs too, obviously, and we'll talk songs later, but yeah, I agree, hear this classic, the things that Kiss was about in the 70s and stuff, the partying, having fun, mischievous deeds and so forth, I think that's what a lot of people would have liked to have heard. And so, yeah, Eddie Kramer probably would have been my choice. Nothing against Bob Ezrin, but I think Eddie Kramer.
Ken, how about you?
Yeah, I also wrote down Eddie Kramer in my notes, and for reasons of similar to Alex, where he was talking about where they left off, and really where they left off as all 4 of them playing on the same album was Love Gun, really, where they were still all 4 of them playing their instruments. Now, once you got past, or Live 2, Side 4, you had, they weren't all there. And then Dynasty, Unmasked, they weren't all there. So, and another reason for Kramer is I would hope that he would do the same thing like he did in Rock and Roll Over, take them to a theater, try to capture that live sound on record, and, which was, Rock and Roll Over. At that time, I had a close second with Bob Ezrin, but not the Destroyer Bob Ezrin or the Elder Bob Ezrin, but the Revenge. If it was the Revenge Bob Ezrin, I would have been okay with it. But I have a feeling that Kiss was looking to try to do a Destroyer 2 at the time, and I think it probably would have been called Destroyer 2 had they had Bob Ezrin produce that album. But I'm going to go with Eddie Kramer for sure.
Yeah, and I got to agree with you to a certain extent. Eddie Kramer would have been the perfect person to really kind of recapture Kiss 1977, which was what the reunion was basically based off. So I agree with Lonnie about the sound of Rock and Roll Over and maybe the rawness of the early albums of trying to recapture that vibe, but also showing a little bit of maturity. I love the suggestion of Michael James Jackson. I mean, obviously he was a guy who came in really off the cuff that no one expected or knew about, really, and I don't think anyone's found him in recent years. So he would have been a really great one, especially for recording drums. So Bob Ezrin was involved early on, but had to bow out. He wasn't able to commit the time to it with his business, I think.
Was he producing another record at the time?
I think there was a production of another album going on, and he was he had a startup that was starting to get busy. I was re-listening to an interview where he addressed the work that he had done and how he'd love to have done stuff, and obviously he did do some stuff with the band for the album. So
it's a shame.
I think we concur. Eddie Kramer is the best person to capture the rocking side of Kiss. Bob Ezrin, of course, has his cachet. He's probably better at kind of developing the artistic side. So, I could go with either one, really, in 1998 or 97, 98. So let's talk a little bit about Ace and Peter. Should they have had an equal amount of participation? If we take out the renegotiation, should Gene and Paul have caved and allowed them to be fully participating members on a reunion album, or did Peter and Ace shoot themselves in the feet again? Ken?
Yes, they should have let them have equal shares in the recording of the album, and because that's what it was back where when they left off. That's what it was. So I would think that they should have done that. This is they already.
They just played 100+ shows with the band.
And they already did not give them equal shares on the tour. So obviously, and I mean, come on, throw them a bone. Give them equal shares, and let's all work together. Get everybody in the studio. I mean, if I was the executive producer, you have to get all 4 guys in that studio. I don't want any outside musicians recording. You got to have all 4 or forget it. I mean, that's how I would take it, because you see what we got.
Yeah, I think I'll agree to a certain extent that obviously if you're going to make a reunion album, it helps to have the members of the band making said reunion album.
It's a minor detail.
Yeah. And for it to be obvious. I think one of the problems with Psycho Circus as it was envisaged or presented was the Paul Stanley wrote a song for Peter, where Peter did bring songs to the session. I mean, Justice for All and Hope and Together were the 3, I think, that, and we did hear Hope later. And I know it makes you shudder, but what could Kiss have done with that? Maybe.
Well, and I think that's where you're missing a guy like Bob Ezrin, who could have taken a song like that. Am I stealing your thunder, Julian?
No, go for it.
Okay, but that's where you're missing a guy like Bob Ezrin who could take a song like a piece of crap song that we got on Peter's album, like Hope, and mold it into something so much different and so much better. I mean, we've heard like the original version of Beth, and what he helped do with that and helped sculpt and create that. And then Peter could have still had. I mean, and I'm not saying Hope could have been the next Beth or anything like that, but I mean, you could have had, Ezrin take a song that Peter brought in and help mold it and turn it into something a whole lot better. And you have Peter Criss singing a song that has Peter Criss's name on it, and not a song written by Paul Stanley for Peter Criss, which was a piece of crap anyway.
Yeah, and that was just wrong. Alex, what are your thoughts?
No, I fully agree. I think I think with doing the album, I would have at least attempted to have had those 4 guys all do the songs. And obviously, if because Kiss has done it through the history, if they couldn't get the feel, then, that's when I think you could have supplementary drumming at that point. But at least give them the shot, especially Ace. I mean, Peter, I know there's, the issues with his arms and stuff, but, I think not having Ace on, on as many tracks, and you hear him now, and he's sounding great on the tour. He clearly still has his chops and stuff, and, when you hear the live versions of, like, Psycho Circus or Within, and I think that, why couldn't they play these songs? It's almost like the same question when you hear why Eric Carl wasn't on the Elder, but then you hear him play it on the Friday show, and you go, hey, he seems like he's got it right there, so I don't know what was going on in the studio, but I think that, and then like you said, Lonnie, with finally, with Peter Criss, sorry, with Hope and stuff, we've heard the not great version of, was it Beck? And we see what Bob Ezra was able to do with it, and I think that's the issue of having a producer. I know it's like having a publisher when you're writing a book with it's like going to the dentist. They help polish it up, clean it, kind of drill out whatever needs to be taken out and make it look good. And so I think Bob Ezra could have done some magic with that.
Yeah, Ken
went. It's my turn.
I went.
Yeah,
I interrupted.
Yeah, sorry. I got paged at work, so I'm multitasking.
I understand that.
So Lonnie, cover me. Lonnie, your thoughts?
No, it's all right. Lonnie's a ball of fire that anyway. So, I think that I would have given Ace and Peter every opportunity to play the role they were supposed to play on the album, and they had just played on the entire reunion tour, well, except for one show for Peter. They had played the entire reunion tour, and the reunion tour was, at the time, the biggest grossing Kiss tour ever. I mean, Gene and Paul had to have seen the success that, we went from playing half-empty arenas on the Revenge tour to playing airport convention halls on the convention tour to back to playing sold-out arenas and stadiums in international markets. I would have given Ace and Peter every opportunity to be on that album and make it what the fans wanted. And at the time, too, Gene and Paul were really touting that we're, for the fans. That was when they were really pumping that in your face, that, we are here for the fans. This is what they want, so this is what we're going to do. And, they even freaking say that on the Piece of Crap song, "You Wanted the Best, we hear and we obey." Yeah. But and everybody kind of grunts when I mention that song. But they were really pumping that in your face. So we are for the fans. Well, give the fans what they wanted, and that is what the fans wanted. Was Ace and Peter. We hadn't gotten it fully since '77. So give it to us. And if you have to take Peter to school, if you got to splice Peter's drum parts together like Guns N' Roses did with Steven Adler on Civil War, so be it. That's what the fans wanted. And like Julian said, it was so freaking obvious the first time you heard it. Not
to me.
What are you talking about?
It was not obvious to me when I first heard Psycho Circus. No.
You thought it was Peter Criss?
I even looked at my review from 1998. I was like, Peter did a really good job drumming on this album.
Julian,
and that's on the internet.
You're better than that.
That's
better than that.
That's forever. So I could never escape from that one, and I'm not even going to try.
You're better than that. Listen to that.
I could not tell.
But I think part of it though, a lot of us wanted to believe that the rumors we were hearing weren't true. That no, they wouldn't do that to us.
Yeah, they would.
But they did. So sad. But don't get me wrong. I love the lineup today, but I love the original lineup. It's my favorite lineup, and it's not. And they didn't give me what I wanted. It was and obviously it was the last chance to have that. So
could a real producer
I would have banned Tommy Thayer if I'm the executive producer, and that's the theme of today's show. I would have banned Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer from the studio, and said, "This is how we're going to do it."
Well,
and Kevin Valentine for that matter too.
Eric Singer, I don't think was anywhere near.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was torn with Alice Cooper. Kevin Valentine.
Wasn't he pretty pissed at the time too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so could a real producer have put Gene and Paul in their place and say, "Hey, you really have to, you really have to let Ace and Peter play on this album. I don't care if they're pissing you off. I don't care if business is a problem. Sort that out later. Get them in here now, or get Peter and Ace in on their own and work with them." Could a producer have done that, or is it simply a matter that Gene and Paul are the bosses and no producer has the cojones to say that to them? I mean, after all, they're getting paid by the KISS organization, which did not include Ace and Peter at the time. Should they have put their foot down and said, either you fix this or I'm walking"? Lonnie, you look ready to burst.
And that's the problem. You hit it right on the head. Because you could say either we do this my way or I'm walking. They'd say, well, see you later.
Bye.
You know what I mean? You nailed it, Julian, because that's exactly. I mean, sometimes if you're at work and your boss says this is the way we're going to do things and you don't agree with it at all, but if you speak up, that either you're going to get reprimanded or you're going to get fired or demoted, and say no, that's not ethical. We can't do something like that. Well, you kind of suck it up and just kind of go with it, even if you don't agree with it. And that's just the way the world works, unfortunately. But
yeah, and it didn't work out very well at Nuremberg either. So
I don't know. I think they could have. I could have a different producer than Fairbairn. Could have done that because from what Paul Stanley has said about that Gene Simmons was up his what, brown nosing him a lot and stuff, and I still think that Paul would have been okay, to tell you the truth, with for them. They got in the studio, they were able to do at least one song all together. Why not the rest? And I think Kramer should have, if it was Kramer, he should have, he would have gotten all four guys to play together. Whether
I think Kramer would have gotten Ace more involved, for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? I think if you had Kramer, I think you would have had a much stronger Ace presence on the record.
Yeah.
No
we
doubt.
don't know how Peter Criss's skills were at that time, and how his arthritis and all that stuff is at that time, and how good or bad. I mean, he seemed to do good for the one song, Into the Void. So I think he should have, he should have been on the rest of it. And I think a producer could have done it. There's some producers who will talk your band into it. They're very convincing, saying, if you do this, you're going to make it all a disjointed album with all these different musicians on it, and it's just not going to work. So I would hope that a producer could have done it.
Alex,
I think expectations should have been set with the producer, in the sense of a producer going like, okay, and obviously having somebody, you got to have somebody you trust, and I think that's what if you had Kramer or Ezrin. I'm not saying Paul didn't trust Bruce, but I mean, you hear the stuff where Paul would go back in and switch stuff around or whatnot. But I think it should have had somebody that as they trusted, and then at the same time, like I said, have the expectation set with the producer and the band. With the producer going like, okay, you guys have me here as the producer of the album. So I'm here to make the best album. You guys are working in a sense for me. Let's make the album. Obviously I want to hear your input. But, if you guys have me as the producer and stuff, have faith in me that we're going to make it sound the way it's supposed to sound. And, I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, KISS should be able to go like, no, we don't like how it sounded. But I think expectations were set between proper, band with the producer. Because you hear the story like when Bob Ezrin came in during Destroyer and, the whistle, let's go to work campers kind of a thing. And I think, they should have almost kind of had that mentality.
I think that's probably one of the greatest things. I think they needed that mentality. They needed the camp director again, especially with Ace and Peter, and maybe Ezrin could have, brought Gene and Paul back to kind of reality of trying to make things work as a unit again. Remember what Bob did with the band on Destroy? He got Peter to rise far, far above where he had been as a drummer. I don't think he did the same with Ace. I don't think he had the patience with Ace because he had his Steve Hunters and his Dick Wagner's, which are just his guns that he can go to directly, if he's got a problem with a guitarist. But he really did a lot for the band. He stretched Gene, he stretched Paul in the songwriting department. He really challenged them, and he was a natural editor for all of their material.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, egos between 76 and 98 had grown so much that I don't think Gene Simmons or Paul Stanley's going to put up with someone blowing a whistle and say, let's go to work campers by 1998. I think that, and especially coming off the tour that they had just come off of, Gene and Paul were going to be the ones calling the shots and not Bob Ezrin, unfortunately. And I think that's really the downfall of the album.
Yeah, I think as an executive producer, you have to make the calls that if you're not directly producing the album, I still don't get why Fairbairn was ever in the picture other than his relationship with Doc McGee. He's just not anyone who I would have ever thought. I don't think anyone would have ever suggested him to produce a Kiss record when we go back to 1997, 98, when the album's coming out. Yeah, the first name that comes off, yeah, we want it to be like Bon Jovi. No, just like everyone did here, Eddie Kramer, number 1. Bob Ezrin, number 2. Michael James Jackson, number 3. You're probably going to work your way back down the list of producers who have worked with the band previously, who did good work. And there you have it, basically, because no one's going to bring up Vinny Poncia. No one's going to bring up Nevison.
Alex, of course. But, when Black Sabbath recorded that album a couple years ago, the producer sat down with them, and you've probably heard this story, and they made them listen to those original albums and say, this is what you guys sounded like. And this is what you guys need to sound like. And Psycho Circus sounds nothing like the first 6 Kiss records. And like Ken was saying, that's what we wanted, was something that sounded like those first 6 Kiss records. And we didn't get that. And if I was an executive producer, that's what I would have done. Say, listen to these 6 albums. Listen to them on repeat over and over and over and over again. And listen to how they sound. And this is what your new album has to sound like.
Hey, Lonnie, is someone doing Netflix on your Wi-Fi connection? Your video.
No, it's me.
Your video's
Is
horrible.
my video horrible?
Yeah.
Is my wife doing Netflix in the other room? I don't know. I'm going to get in trouble.
But I will say that I think Psycho Circus does have one of the elements of the Classic 6. And that is obviously the intro to Psycho Circus, the song, and the fade out of Journey of a Thousand Years, where they rip a book, the poor man's Bob Ezrin, of tying the album together in a really chintzy kind of way. I mean, it's so transparent, it's almost laughable when you think of, everything that Bob Ezrin kind of did back in his heyday. And I've just been listening to some other albums. I mean, Billion Dollar Babies. I've been listening to Amazon Beach by the Kings, and how it's got the typical Bob Ezrin, motorcycle intro going into the song instead of the car. I was just like sitting there going, "Oh shit, really?" I didn't know that had become like the play. But Psycho Circus is the poor man's version of that, which. There should have been, listen to these albums, like Lonnie said, and then, Gene, don't you dare come to me with Within, or You Wanted the Best.
Right.
I mean,
or We Are One.
Or
it's
We
a
Are
leftover
One.
from Carnival of Souls or whatever. So
Yeah, and when we get into the additional material that they did record, I mean, Carnival of Souls, I mean, really?
I Want to Rule the World.
Classic Kiss, and that's your kind of material that you're going to bring body and soul. The only classic song in there is, of course, It's My Life, really, because it was the
and you
one.
hate that.
It's the one song that should have been a classic, that never was.
And you hate that version, Julian.
Well, yeah, but
It's not, it's not as good. But a different producer could have,
Right.
done a good job with, like
a different
Michael James
producer.
Jackson, which Alex had brought up.
Nice job.
Alex,
Yes.
what do you think?
I mean, I'm like with you guys. I think the style and having having the producer do his homework and stuff. They really should have done the homework. They should have done the studying. I mean, heck, if I had been Kiss, I would have called Bob, Eddie, Michael James Jackson, and whatnot, and have them each do a demo. Have the band come in, do the same flipping song, have them mix it and see which one sounded better, and go, okay, we're going to go with this guy. We like the way it's sounding there, and again, they've captured that feel. I mean, I think we might be stressing it a little bit too much, but 1996, 97, 98 when the album comes out, so we'll say 97. 20 years, 1977. 20 years capturing that hype and stuff, and Lonnie, I think you mentioned a few songs you weren't too fans of with the Psycho Circus. I mean, obviously I had to keep some of the songs there, but
Go down the list.
yeah. But it's just one of those. They have potential, and when we get to the songs and stuff, pledge allegiance to the state of rock and roll, Into the Void, kick awesome songs. Why? And then to get in the crap, having somebody say, "Yeah, Gene, no, you're one of the best." No, that's not your best. Get it out of here and stuff. That was not a good song. So, I mean, I guess to agree with you guys, having somebody do the homework to get the sound.
Yeah. So here's what I would have done as the producer. I would have said, all of you bring me 3 songs, and then to Gene and Paul, bring me 6. So that Ace and Peter didn't hear that. And from those 18 songs,
Then you whittle it down.
record them all. And then what you do is say, Peter, I think your voice would sound better than Gene's on this song. Come in and do a vocal take for me. No, man, I don't want to. No, come on, Peter. I think you're going to sound better. Oh, okay. You got to work with these guys. And again, we don't have to be realistic because we know this shit would never happen because we're talking about Kiss, but that's what I would do. I would have had them record 18 songs. I would have had them do 3 of Peter's, 3 of Ace's, and I would have had Ace and Peter both doing vocals on Gene and Paul songs or where their voice would have worked better, and either have done it as duets or have used them prominently in the background or given them the songs if they really were better suited. And then you go in and present all these songs when they're mixed and you've got roughs of them all and say, hey, okay, here's the 18 songs. Let's sit down and listen. All right, well, I really like, such and such a song, Paul, but I think it sounds better with Peter. Remember how Hard Luck Woman, you gave that to Peter to sound because, and stroke him a bit and say, I think his voice, and play it for him. Obviously, because he is the boss, he's going to say, no, Peter's not singing any of my fucking songs. If all he can bring is hope, that's his problem. It's just one of those things. But that's what I would have done as a producer. And I don't know how realistic it is, especially with all the politics as we've talked about. But I would have had just Peter doing vocal takes of other songs, just to have a different perspective on that material. The problem, which we've kind of mentioned with Psycho Circus, is the material. Is so much of it is lackluster, or contrived, or forced, and even the additional material that you can now get out on YouTube, like The Body and Soul, You Are Mine, Sweet and Dirty, Carnival of Souls, Rain Keeps Falling, I Want to Rule the World. Out of all that stuff, I'm going to go out there and say I Want to Rule the World is the only song that I would have really have preferred to be on the album than any one of the songs. It's my life, yeah. Okay, that's a given. I've already said I like it, but Body and Soul, you can see why it wasn't used. It's crap. You Are Mine, well, it's kind of uninspired, like a lot of Gene's stuff on there. What I find most disappointing about Psycho Circus is how uninspired it was and how the producer failed in his role of inspiring the band and saying, I'm sorry, these simply are not good enough. You look at some of the documentation that exists for the album, and Bob has his, Bruce Fairburn has his A, B, and C list, and it's just not much to choose from. It's like they deliberately did not bring much or weren't willing to throw a lot of material. And we know Paul doesn't like his material not to get used, and that seems to be the problem. Did Bruce fail in his task of getting the band inspired? And could you do a better job of that, Ken?
Yeah, like you, Julian. You said bringing 18 songs. I had wrote down some things on paper. I said ask each member to have 5 songs, to bring in 5 songs each in demo form, and then and I even said meet in the studio with all 4 members. And then the other thing about it is recording these things as live as possible to get the real Kiss sound. That's, do it live in the studio. Don't do a bunch of, separate takes and things. Try to record live as a band to get that sound. And I said for the producer, I have final say of what songs appear on the record. But even if those songs were no good, we know the songs that were and were not on the album that were recorded. They had better material to choose from. Geez, Gene's written 1 million songs and demos and has millions of demos. And then even the songs going back to songs like Smoke, and some other ones from the past that Paul has written. What's that other song he played recently, Unplugged on the Mistake? Yeah, come on, jeez, that would have been great. Bring the old. That had the old feel, and that's what a lot of it is that feel. I think they lost that feel, that feel you have when you're a young person and writing. It changes over time. You get older. You lose that. It's emotion, and things have changed. Now you have had success and so on. They had a wealth of material to choose from. And like you mentioned also, Julian, about Van Halen. Yes, they should have done something like Van Halen did and went back and used some of those went back to those old demos like Van Halen did, like She's the Woman that Van Halen used, that was even from, I think, a Gene Simmons demo. So, yeah, there's a lot to choose from. These songs, the Circus album was all disjointed because you had different styles on there. You had the Destroyer style of, Psycho Circus, and maybe a Journey of 1,000 Years, which I love. I love both of those songs, but they're totally different from, You Wanted the Best and You Got the Best, and We Are One, and other songs. It's very disjointed for an album that's supposed to be some kind of concept album. So yeah, they should have went back and grabbed a bunch of old good demos and brought them in, and then the producer can pick those.
I'm looking at a list here of Gene's stuff from, it looks like it's January 97, and he's got You Wanted the Best, It's My Life, Within, I Want to Rule the World, I Am Yours, You Are Mine, Rain Keeps Falling, Carnival of Souls, I Only Come Out at Night, Sweet and Dirty, Psycho Circus, Body and Soul, I Finally Found You, I can't read that next one, and I Had a Dream. Oh my God, I Had a Dream. Imagine Kiss doing that. It's just cringe-worthy on so many levels that no one ever, I guess, got through to them and said that, you can do better. Alex, what would you do to make them do what they really ought to have done? They're their own worst enemies in so many ways. Each of them, not any particular one. All of them.
Oh yeah, I really think I would have had no shame looking back at some of the back demos they might not have used, throwing that out there. And then I like what you said, go in, record 18 songs, do some different takes with it. I think there was an interview that said, like, when Kiss was doing I Walk Alone, I think they mentioned, like, Gene did he does a version with Gene where he did the vocal on, and I think Paul did a vocal on it too, maybe. Besides keeping with Bruce, and having Bruce do it and stuff, because Bruce kind of, I think the story for, like, I Walk Alone was, like, Bruce kind of did, like, the demo tape and stuff, but he wasn't really expecting to be singing on the track, and they ended up keeping him on it. Same concept, I would have gone through and, like I said, just, different ones, just to see how it sounds, and just, say to the guys, like, look, don't worry about the royalty aspect of it, or stuff like that. I almost kind of wish he would have said, like, okay, if we're doing a reunion album, y'all are going to get equal share on the tracks. It's just, stop the arguing and stuff. Y'all are going to get an equal portion of the shares on the track. For royalties and stuff, just to keep that whole argument out and stuff, and just try to just do the album, like Lonnie mentioned, the whole, we're doing this for the fans, and but then they didn't do it for the fans, and it's disappointing they didn't do it for the fans, and they had the potential. I think it's really, if you were to sum up the whole Psycho Circus, they had the potential, they didn't use it.
Could that have helped? Because that's actually a pretty good idea, to have just credited each of the songs to Kiss.
I think so. I think I would have just, however they done the contract and stuff, going like, look, Peter, you guys are going to get whatever we're paying you salaried right now. That's what you get. This album and stuff, everybody's going to get an equal cut of it. And I'm sure there's ways to go. Everybody gets an equal cut of the album up into, maybe say up to 2 million sales. And then after 2 million sales worldwide or whatnot, or US, will then attribute it to who the primary songwriter is. And, because they can organize whose, name goes first for each song and stuff, for who's the primary person. But I think that would have, would have taken a lot away, a lot of unwarranted stress.
Yeah, I'm looking at Bruce's A-list here. Number 1 song, We Are One. And I think that just sums it up. Because number 1, they were not one. They never were one. And I like Gene's notes on the side. To perform live, you wanted the best, sweet and dirty, and it's my life. Hell, yes, yes, and yes, and all 3 of those would have been better than having to ever hear Within live.
Yeah.
So, Lonnie, the same question goes to you.
I agree, and that was some of the notes I'd written down, was that I wish they would have done something like Van Halen did also, and that's go back and look at those demos and use those as a basic structure, at least. I'm not saying just release those demos as the new Kiss album, but use those demos and use those chord progressions or use those melodies as a structure for what we want this to be. Because we've talked about it before, can you write the same song in your 40s that you would have written in your 20s? No, you probably can't. But you know what you can do is you can go back and look at an idea that you had in your 20s and develop it into something that you can use in 1998. And Van Halen did that very successfully with their album that they put out. Does that album to me stand up to the other Van Halen albums? No, probably not. But it stands up better to me than what Psycho Circus does to Rock and Roll Over.
Right, and then what about Black Sabbath? Does their album...
I love 13. I love 13.
Did that methodology work?
I think 13 stands up very well to those classic Black Sabbath albums, especially the later Black Sabbath albums, like killing myself here that I can't.
See, they're so forgettable, you don't remember.
Exactly. See, they're so forgettable. I don't listen to them. But what is it called? Damn it. But anyway,
I'm just gonna let you keep drowning. I'm not even gonna throw you.
I actually want to throw
technical ecstasy.
Yeah, that's it.
I actually want to throw another name. He did a great job, and he went back and decided to do a rock album. Was Todd Rundgren when he came out with the Arena album, And I think I remember like reading some press, like he had went back and listened to the classic rock albums that he grew up loving and stuff, and listening to, and then came and did an album. So, you know, I think another name in hat, but just that methodology, I guess, that he used. You know, even with Kiss, I would have said, all right, you guys, you need to go, as the band too, you guys need to go listen to your earlier albums, you know. And I'd say to Peter and Gene, like, you know what, go listen to Paul and Ace's solo album from '78, because look at how they sound.
Yeah, and that I think would have been a great thing for a producer to be a cheerleader, to inspire the band, to actually have sat the four members of the band down and played selected tracks off the original albums and been a real, say, this is Kiss, this is Peter Criss on drums, you know, really G him up and, you know, sing his praises to the other guys in the band, and then to play songs from the classic albums that inspired them, because they've said enough about what their inspiration is. You know, play some Free, play some Zeppelin, and, you know, play some Aerosmith, play some Cheap Trick, play some contemporary stuff, and say, this is the stuff that was going on. This is the stuff that inspired you. Throw on some Who, and says, now let's go make some music. Gene, put away those 800 demos because they are really not very good. You know, Paul, you're not on the right track here. You know, put away Diane Warren's phone number, please. You know, leave Holly Knight alone, and don't you dare call Desmond. You know, it's you guys can do better. So you guys can do this, but again, it comes back to, would Paul and Gene put up with someone at that stage in their career, coming down from the ego trip of a highly successful reunion? Would there ever have been a role for an executive producer to say, Gene, that's crap, get it out. It's not worthy of being anywhere near the KISS logo. How dare you denigrate it in such a way?
And that's the problem. That producer wouldn't have seen 5 o'clock in the afternoon if somebody would have came out and told Gene and Paul that at that point. They would have been out the door. And that's the biggest problem in itself. And that's why Paul Stanley has been the producer of the later 2 KISS albums, because they don't want to listen to criticism from anyone else. That it's my way, and this is what I think a KISS album should sound like, and this is what a KISS album should be like. And I think that's why Psycho Circus suffers, because I think, like Bruce was afraid to speak up to do something. And I think Bruce got into it with them. It's been documented. Bruce and Paul got into it that, you know, this may be your first KISS record, but it's not my first KISS record. We've heard that quote before. So,
and maybe that's the problem, Paul. That it's not your first KISS record, and you're not inspired by it. It's going to work for you. It's your job. It's what you've done. It's what you can do in your sleep.
You know, and it's really sad, because they were of capable body to do an album, all 4 of them at that time, because they just got off of a major tour, and then they just went on another tour. You know, Ace and Peter were very capable at the time of making a KISS album, and now, you know, that ship has sailed. Whether, you know, and I know that Ace and Peter aren't in the band, but, you know, that ship has sailed as far as making a KISS record with all 4 original members. That was the one chance we had of it, and it was marketed as, but it obviously wasn't.
You've mentioned Van Halen and the connection with that, and I don't really want to go too deeply into that side of the topic. But one connection that is worthy mentioning is Ted Templeman. He, of course, produced another very famous and vastly underrated, in my opinion, album, Aerosmith, Done with Mirrors, 1985. Getting that band and those egos back in the studio and actually putting together anyone who disagrees with me, go out and listen to it, and then compare it to everything that came after that was produced by, let's see, who was that producer? Oh, Bruce Fairbairn.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Who did Pump? Bruce Fairbairn. Who did Get a Grip? Okay. All right. So compare it, Done with Mirrors, to those 3 abominations that come afterwards. And yeah, they've got some good songs on them, but you're on the downward slope for Aerosmith. I mean,
but it's not Aerosmith.
You know, Aerosmith became Bon Jovi and out Bon Jovi'd Bon Jovi by going for the MTV exposure, and they did it perfectly. More power to them. They sold millions more as a reform band, and you get this one reunion album that Templeman put together. He almost would be a good one to suggest instead of going to Kramer, who had only worked with Kiss, as things were kind of declining, as he'd had experience working with, Van Halen. He'd been there and worked with those egos, David Lee Roth versus Eddie and his symbiotic brother. Again, I think ego is the big stopping point that kills any of the fantasy of how could an executive producer have made the whole Psycho Circus project better. I also think that what would have been better is, like we've all suggested, recording a whole lot of songs and saving half for a second album. You put out 10 or 12 on one album, and then you've got a backup cache that you can use for B-sides, like they did In Your Face. I just think it would have been
movie
better.
soundtracks, things like that.
Yeah, I think it would have been great for them to actually record more than they needed and actually use the material in other places. They had chances in '99 to get on, like, I think the Power Rangers. I mean, God help us, but
They
It was
could
big
have.
at the time, though.
I was into the Power Rangers as a kid, and I think they used a Red Hot. I was like 7, man. Lonnie, quit making fun of me, man. But I think they used a Red Hot Chili Pepper song when they did the Power Rangers movie. They had like a Red Hot Chili Pepper song in the beginning and stuff. But I mean, it could have been a Kiss song right there. That could have been an introduction to a whole new generation. So, Lonnie's like,
Sorry, Alex.
It's okay.
I guess the Power Rangers did have their own color scheme, just like the Teletubbies.
Just like Kiss.
Yeah, but that is actually cool. But the Teletubbies and Power Rangers, well, to each their own, shall we say?
Right.
So, did Kiss kind of blow it in leaving it too late? By waiting until early 1998, they'd been off the road 6 months before they hit the studio. Did they kill any impetus or anything, Alex?
I think so. I think they should have had something. I mean, I know they did You Wanted the Best, You Got the Best, but I mean, if anything, a single when the farewell, not the farewell, but when the reunion tour started, a single or a live EP of a few songs. I mean, I know that the live EP kind of killed the Frehley's Comet vibe, I guess, but I think a live EP with the same production quality of those 3 live Psycho Circus tracks and the 5 tracks that are on that extended version of the Psycho Circus, you know what I'm talking about? I think they're like recorded from Indiana. Like
Right.
that sounds excellent. I think an EP like that with a new track would have been awesome. To get out there and stuff during the farewell tour, and it could have had that just been a tour exclusive. You could pick it up at the concert and stuff, and I think they could have had something.
Back in the day when you could get away with including an album with a ticket price and it counting towards your sales, right? SoundScan guaranteed platinum albums, which you probably could have got. But I think you go one step back from that, and it would have been a better idea to have gotten the band in the studio before they even hit the road in '96. While they're rehearsing, get them writing, get them recording, an EP or some tracks, and have them working with a producer who's then going to do a full album with them after the first run of the tour is done, because it was always a 5-year deal, regardless of what's later occurred. So get them in there. I mean, it'd be like Killers all over again. 4 new tracks, put it on a greatest hit instead of re-recording the vocal. I mean, well, shit, they did do the vocal work for, You Wanted the Best.
Yeah.
You could easily have...
We're already in the studio.
Yeah, so, knock out some tracks, even if it's just, okay, Ace, what you got? Okay, that sounds Kiss-like enough. Peter.
Yeah, and even if it's, I understand that when the reunion tour first happened, those first leg of shows in the U.S., people wanted to hear those classic 70s Kiss songs, and they didn't play anything newer than I Was Made for Loving You is the newest song that they played. But, maybe by the first of the year, 97, something like that, then that album, like when Greatest Kiss came out in April of 97, instead of having shouted out loud, I mean, and granted, instead of having that shout out loud version from Detroit on there as the one like incentive for you to go out and grab it because it was a different version of everything else that you already had, have a new track or two on there that maybe they had already cut prior to going out on tour while they're in the studio rehearsing. And I think that maybe gotten the juices flowing a little bit faster, maybe, better material. So I think that's an excellent point.
I like that idea. I wish I'd thought of it. Greatest Kiss, because of course I came out in November in '96 in most other markets.
April here, but I guess
if they
fall
done
of
a
'96
combined
in
one,
other markets, yeah.
They could have had a monster Christmas selling album.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well, back when they announced the reunion tour, and they first showed up on the Grammys and so on, I was like, okay, we're gonna get a new Kiss album. That's what I thought. I thought we were gonna get some new music before they went out on tour, because that's the way it worked. They were always promoting, album tour. So I was expecting that, and I was hoping for it. And why it took so long, well, it's a couple of years, but it took so long to get this any new kind of new material. Man, I would have loved to have something new. Like I said, maybe the greatest hits kind of thing with, one song of each guy lead singing. Each of them have one song, and throw that on there and promote the heck out of it, and call it the Kiss reunion album or whatever. You could call it whatever you want.
Yeah, call it Greatest Kiss and just do a different color outline for each logo with the band colors member. So you have to buy all.
To get geeks like us like 4
copies.
Yeah.
So see, they could have made even more money. So yeah, I agree that
guitar picks,
They should have recorded something before that. I mean, I always thought that. I always wanted that, and I always thought that, and they missed the boat on that one.
Yeah, it should have been part of the whole equation from day one that we will be doing a reunion album and have the producer or executive producer, as we've posited here, in place beforehand and said, guys, while you're on the road, get writing. So Peter can write a whole bunch of songs about how sore his arms are. Ace can write a whole bunch of songs about what bastards Gene and Paul are.
Keeping me off the drugs.
Yeah, they're no fun. No fun. And Paul can sing about alfalfa or whatever, floated his boat on that tour. But riding on the road, at least they would have. It just seems that they didn't do any of that. And maybe they couldn't, when you're staying in 5-star hotels, flying on a private jet, you're just not going to be able to, okay.
The juices aren't flowing.
Okay, time to write. No. I can't. My caviar's arriving.
Exactly.
Yep.
So possible track listing, maybe?
My arms are tired. Got the munchies.
I've got my track listing. Well,
your track listing for what?
I can share. If I was to have been the producer for Psycho Circus.
Well, let's hear it.
Yeah. Well, real quick, I'll throw this. I like the I don't know, is it unmixed? Is that what we'd call those versions of the Psycho Circus tracks that ended up being on the album, but on the album versions? Do you know what I'm talking about, Julian?
No idea what you're talking
about. Are they demo versions? Or?
They're not demo versions.
Like I Want to Rule the World and crap like that?
They're alternative takes and alternative mixes and works in progress, I expect. I have no idea.
I wasn't sure what we want to call those. But I guess I did my version. Right? I figured since I was the executive producer, I'd do a new track sequence.
Okay.
And I start with Psycho Circus, but like I said, I like the alternative take on it. And then I like Within, and I like the alternative take on that one. I know you guys might beg to differ, but I like the mix they had, and then Pledge Allegiance, to the State of Rock and Roll, and then I would add It's My Life right after that, and then I've done Into the Void.
I like the other solo version on that one.
Yeah, not the one that's on the box set, but the other alternative version of It's My Life is a killer version. YouTube it, guys. I wasn't a big hater of We Are Once. I kept it on there. That one's that could be swapped down. I Want to Rule the World. I actually like that one. So, it's my life. And I Want to Rule the World from like those outtakes. And then Raise Your Glasses, Finally Found My Way. But that one, I'd keep the one that was on the album. Nothing against all the extra horns that were on that alternative take version. It didn't really flow too much with the horns. And then Dreamin'. With the actual lyrics, because I think the alternative one doesn't have a verse to it. It's just an instrumental. They didn't like sing the verse. And then Journey of 1,000 Years. So, I really kind of kept the basic sequence through in 2 songs. I got rid of You Wanted the Best because that's just horrendous. I'm sorry, Gene. Actually, no, I'm not sorry. That's a horrendous track.
Yeah.
And
no
deal with
apologies.
it. Yeah, deal with it. And honestly, like I said, it's my idea. I would have been really big with having the original lineup. I've got nothing against if they needed supplementary playing with Kevin Valentine or Tommy Thayer if they couldn't get it out of Ace and Peter, but that's only like if they couldn't get it out of it. And I will say, I think it would have been fun if they were in a good mood. I didn't know really the feelings, but I really like Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll, and I think it just would have been a fun track to have had Bruce and Eric on as well. But just I don't know, I thought like a cool close, just a good rock and roll song and stuff, and I just thought it would have been like a fun, just have them guest on it and stuff, almost like a good
Bruce probably is on it.
Yeah.
What song do you want Bruce and Eric on?
Pledge Allegiance to the State. I could just picture almost, hearing like Eric and Peter, having good vocals in the background and stuff.
I think Eric might have like shoved Peter down a flight of stairs at that point in time.
True. But yeah, there's just that was
just
one song.
Never do songs with such long titles. I mean, can you imagine sitting in the audience? Hey man, play "I Pledge Allegiance to the State."
Rock
you get lost.
Yeah, no, it's such a long title, but I thought that song would have been like a fun one to maybe had some, have them kind of guessed. I think just. Because Kiss is always kind of about giving that story of making, giving you the feels and feel good stuff. And I think that would have been kind of a cool feel good. Like, oh, hey, check out this track's got like the original lineup, but then they got Bruce and Eric, and there's like a dual solo by Ace and Bruce. That's kind of cool. Like, all right, cool.
Yeah, Shaken Sharpshooter with a dual guitar solo. Because obviously Ace did do something with that later. Hope, sung by someone else. Written by someone else.
Written by a different song called Hope.
Hey, I brought you a song called Hope. Okay, let me rework that for you,
Throw
Peter.
it away and I'll write a different song.
Here you go. Okay, Peter, here's a song called Hope. You're going to be singing this. It's in the key of life.
But the word hope is not even in the song. Exactly.
We'll still give you a writing. We'll give you a writing credit. Just go with it.
Yeah, I mean, when we get down to the only songs I really have a big problem with on what was actually released are You Wanted the Best and Within. Everything, and I guess I finally found my way, but
yeah.
Don't tell Andrew Scambatti though. Andrew hates that one.
I finally found my way is dreadful. I don't think you can actually put that next to Hope and say which one is better. They're so far, out of there. But You Wanted the Best is just a shit sandwich of, being contrived.
Did you guys ever hear that on the radio? I heard it on the radio even.
I always hated the little.
I couldn't believe it. I was like,
well, they released.
They tried to make that a single.
Yeah, they tried to make a single, and that's the other thing is I wouldn't even. I mean, Psycho Circus was a single. I would have, what's the other one? Raise Your Glasses. I mean, could have been a single, something like that. But these other songs, I would have definitely like Alex moved stuff around, got rid of stuff. I mean, Journey of 1,000 Years, which I love, I think should have added one more verse. It always seemed like it should have had one more verse in it. And then the other thing about it is I would have moved it, to the end of the album, which ties in to the beginning of the album with Psycho Circus. Kind of puts it all together. But, yeah, some of these other songs, like You Wanted the Best, Finally Found My Way, man, replace those with there's a lot better out there.
I could easily switch You Wanted the Best with I Want to Rule the World. Or It's My Life. Either one of those.
Yeah, that's what
if you're going Gene for Gene, then I Want to Rule the World. Way better song.
Yep.
Or Sweet and Dirty.
I would
Yeah.
say the one thing I've always liked with I Finally Found My Way, I do like the dual vocal of Paul and Peter.
It's the worst part. It's awful.
I like it, Lonnie. Lonnie, we have different
Ah,
tastes in music. You know that. You make fun of me with the
I
other
know
music
we do.
like.
You
That's
know,
the worst part.
that's the sound of a car crashing,
Thank you, Julian.
When it comes on,
or music to crash your car to you know,
Hit a
the Motley
telephone
Crue
poles.
box set. You know, you hear that?
Exactly.
No.
No,
That's just
You're in the minority there.
Hey, that's all right, man. I'm in a minority of a lot of things at times.
sorry, Alex.
That's okay.
I disagree, but only mildly.
Hey, I got a mildly from Julian, Lonnie, so take that.
No, I don't agree. I don't disagree
All
mildly.
Let's wrap this up. Any last thoughts? I guess. Would being the executive producer of Psycho Circus, I mean, you'd have to be a psycho executive, I think, in order to get them to work as a team, to work realistically within their boundaries, to define any boundaries. Would it be a lost cause? Was it something that Kiss would just simply have been incapable of doing? So is Psycho Circus, you know, the only thing we could get out of them? Could anyone have gotten better? Lonnie.
I don't know. I don't know if anyone could have gotten anything better at that point.
And still have a job.
Exactly, and still have a job. You know, I think we all said at the beginning that Eddie Kramer should have been the producer on the album, but could Eddie Kramer have survived the egos that all four egos that were in the room? Maybe not necessarily all at the same time, but could he have gotten around all four of those egos after they just came off the biggest tour of the year and reclaimed their spot on top of the rock and roll pyramid? I don't know. I'd like to think that there was something more in them that could have been better. But I think with the egos that were at stake and outside voices coming to play a more dominant role in all four, and not just Ace and Peter, but in all four of them saying, you're the reason. I don't think it could have been much better at that point, unfortunately. Much as I would have liked it to be, and as much as, like I said at the beginning, as much as I had hoped for it to be. Unfortunately, I think that at the end of the day, Kiss broke up. I mean, not broke up, but the original lineup disbanded because the egos were out of control. And come '98, they were in the same situation again. So unfortunately, I don't think, had Eddie Kramer been involved, I think it could have been a little better, but I don't know how much better, unfortunately.
Alex.
I think kind of like Lonnie the same. You know, I don't know. You know, woulda, shoulda, coulda, but I think if Doc McGee and obviously the producer, but if Doc sat down and was like, okay, guys, do you guys want to have a good comeback album? Do you guys want to make money? Do you want to capture the old fans and get new fans and stuff? We're gonna have to play a little my way, but I think we've got potential, and I think they could have. I do think they could have been, but it would have, it would have been like Luke, Gene, Paul, and obviously Ace and Peter. You got to put your egos aside a little bit and stuff. I mean, obviously I'll listen because I'm your manager. I'll listen to what you guys have to say, and try to make a good decision on it. But if you guys are trying to capture what you had in the '70s. You guys are going to have to give a little. But, I think if they gave a little, they would have received a lot in the end.
Thank you for bringing Doc back up, because if Doc ever writes his autobiography, and I hope he does, with the experience that he does, I want a very detailed chapter on Psycho Circus, Doc. I really want you to let us know what your position was during that era and the recording of the album, because obviously Bruce came through you, and that's the assumption that we've kind of been led to believe. I would also like to know if your role as a manager was so clearly defined that you were just basically there, or whether you were allowed to have input. I'd just love to know what the relationship with Gene and Paul was for the reunion, and particularly the reunion album, and how Doc facilitated when he had to deal with Ace's manager, Peter's manager. So you can just see the politics involved in that, But I think it'd be make for fascinating reading if he's even able to write about it, or whether he's signed some arrangement with Gene and Paul that he'll never, talk about that detail. But I think it would be really fascinating, in particular, to get Doc's side of the story. Ken, what's your thought in wrapping this up?
Yeah, I agree with you about Doc, though. That'd be great to have a book on that. I think back then he was more of a cheerleader in a way, and I don't know if he could have gotten them to work together in the studio, or another producer work, Kramer, to do it, to get them all to contribute and play nice. But I think it is, it's the ego thing, and it probably would have been the same. Going back, hindsight, whether it was a different producer. If you look at today, if Kiss decides to do a new album, I think ego's going to be in the way there too, and Paul's not going to relinquish control to whether it be Eddie Kramer or Bob Ezrin. But I sure hope he would. And if they do record another one, which obviously his vocals are pretty good enough to do it, he's getting more control of it, and as you can see on the Fire and Water with Ace,
he sounded great, didn't he?
It sounded great. I would have loved to hear a new Kiss album with the new tone. So hey, come on, let someone produce it, and let's just get back to the roots.
All right, so that's our topic for this week, everyone. Thank you for listening. Chime in on the message board, or on KissFAQ, or on Facebook, pardon me, and let us know about your Psycho executive. How should an executive producer have handled Kiss? I think Doc McGee really should have been the cheerleader who rallied all 4 of those members into remembering that they were part of something bigger, into remembering the great albums that they had made in their heyday, that they were selling back to the people in the reunion, that he really could have done a better job maybe. And again, we don't know what did go on behind the scenes, and that will hopefully make for some very entertaining interviews with Mitch LaFon one day when he gets Doc on the show. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. So give us your thoughts on that, because this is all been about looking at Psycho Circus and the reunion album from looking from the top down, rather than on a song-by-song basis. So, just a different way of looking at things. So give us your opinion. We are now on Google Play as well, so if it's just another way for you to listen to the show. I have no idea how the hell it works, but we're there. So however you listen to the show, enjoy it, and we do appreciate you listening. So from Lonnie, from Ken, from Alex, and myself, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook, or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.